Didn't Cotton Mather have something to do with starting? He started a Congress not the Congress. He started a trial. The people that made the trial on people. Didn't he start?
I don't know about that. I know that he had written a book, and I'm blanking on the title of it because I'm old and gray, but he had written a book concerning witchcraft that was a huge, it was like a bestseller and very influential in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. And so it's been argued that that helped to whip up some of the frenzy and concern about this kind of thing, that somebody of his erudition and reputation was writing a book that was basically saying, oh yeah, this stuff happens. But as I said earlier, everybody believed that happened. Even the, I can't remember the man's name, but I haven't taught history in a while. There was a merchant who wrote a book very critical of the Salem witch trials at the time, and even he said that, you know, there's no doubt that witches exist and that they do bad things. The question is whether these people were witches. So, claiming to have been bewitched were children. And I mean, one of the mistakes we make when we look at people in the past is we automatically assume that we're a lot smarter than they are, and that, you know, they're, you know, stupid and everything. I mean, when I taught Cole's class about prehistory, one of the things I used was the Iceman, the fellow that they found frozen in the glacier up in northern Italy. And the thing is that guy, if you were to bring him to our world, he would be freaked out, sure, at first, but he would adapt very nicely. On the other hand, if you took one of us and put us in his world, we'd probably be dead in 3 days. I think that, you know, the Mayans, for example, were able to do feats of construction and architecture and astronomy that are astonishing to us, in that, you know, they were able to do it with very primitive means. I think a lot of times we overrate ourselves terribly, and I think that you know, somebody at that time period knew that children were not reliable witnesses, just as we know now. You've got to be very careful when you're convicting somebody on testimony from a child, because children can be very easily manipulated, and I think Mather was very aware of that, was very concerned, because these were capital crimes. You got accused of this, you were hung. And I think Mather was really concerned about executing somebody falsely. And it comes out in the letters that he wrote of advice that he wrote to the judges.
Spectral evidence.
So do you think Cotton Mather, you know how he wrote the letter saying not to use spectral evidence?
Yes, exactly.
Do you think that was a thought that wasn't, you know, at the time nobody thought about not using it?
I'm sure there must have been people that had that same notion. I think in the, you know, as I quoted to you earlier, I think the interesting thing about Mather is that he seems to be very concerned about people getting a bum rap here. You know, as to quote there, the need of a very critical and exquisite caution, lest by too much credulity for things received only upon the devil's authority there be a door open for a long train of miserable consequences. And that was from a letter of advice that he wrote to the judges. So I think that it's you know, it's important that he seems to have wanted to really give these people a fair shake. And I think it's significant also that he was not present at any of the trials and only went to one execution. And some have made the argument that he was at the execution of the Reverend Burroughs because he was a reverend and was maybe giving a little support to somebody, you know, that, you know, he felt like might have been a fellow man of the cloth. But the problem with any of that sort of thing is that it's very important, as I said earlier, that we judge people by the standards of their time and not by our time. For example, there's the famous incident to take from another era of Robert E. Lee when a black man went up to receive communion at his church, and everybody kind of freaked, and Robert E. Lee actually got up and went and kneeled next to him and took communion with him. I'm sure some people would think that was not much of a thing to do, but this was after the Civil War. This was, but the point is for that time, that was a very brave and courteous and courageous thing to do. You have to look at people in their time. I mean, by the standards of our time, King David of Israel would be something a little better than a highwayman and a blood-stained thug. But, you know, you look at him in his time, it was a much harsher time. And I think Cotton Mather has to be looked at in that context.
So he wrote a book on spectral evidence, correct?
He prior to the trial, you know, he did write, I cannot remember the name of the thing, but he did write a book on witchcraft and the devil and all this kind of stuff, and it was very influential. I know that as far as spectral evidence, he basically, I'll have to paraphrase here, but he basically told the judges at the Salem witch trials that you really shouldn't convict somebody on the basis of spectral evidence, because you know, he wasn't saying that sort of thing was not possible, but he was saying that you don't want to, you know, give somebody the rope just because of something like that.
Okay. I was simply asking because if he did write a book on spectral evidence and said it was actual evidence, I was wondering if he ever recanted what he thought about that when he wrote his letters advising the jurors not to hang someone on spectral evidence alone.
I think the mere fact that he would say you wouldn't want to hang them on the basis of spectral evidence alone would indicate that he still considered it valid evidence.
Valid evidence, yes.
But he would not consider that convicting evidence, so to speak.
Smallpox inoculation.
Among many of Cotton Mather's achievements, one was smallpox inoculations. What do you know about that?
Well, that's, you know, if he is, we were talking about earlier, if he's such a superstitious ninny, then why was he encouraging something that's the very cutting edge of science for his day? This shows that he was not the superstitious individual that people, at least some people that want to denigrate the man would say, because he's actually showing a good grasp of science of the day and trying to help people in a way that was, because smallpox was a terrific pathogen in those days. It would kill the fire out of people. And so this was a big deal that he was advocating that.
Do you think Cotton Mather was ever torn between societal views of what he should be, how he should act, and how he actually acted?
I don't know. A question like that, I think a lot of times that implies some kind of schism in the person and the society in which they live. I think actually for Mather, there would have been a strong congruence between the society in which he lived and his personal views. So I don't know that he would have had that. I think you have to maybe come much further up in the future to get that kind of divide where you talk with somebody like a Dietrich Bonhoeffer, you know, and living in the society of Nazi Germany. But I think Mather was pretty much in tune with his society and probably was fairly comfortable with it.
Now you know who Cotton Mather is.